everything up until this point has been done in regular pencil, or a regular #2 pencil. So even though you might see these lines looking like light, you did not draw them in the white charcoal. This is the white charcoal. All right, there should be one of these in your actual supply box. All right. All right. And what I'm going to recommend you guys do is I'm going to recommend that if you're a righty, that you work from the top left of your picture and work your way down. That way you're not dragging your hand over anything, just like we did with our portraits. To start with this one, I mean, this is really not so different and so complicated for you guys. The only thing that I want you guys to keep in mind is that you should probably start with the high points. All right, and when I say the high points, I'm going to start with the very brightest part. And that's going to be the area right over here on the tip of the ear. And again, I'm working down this way, so again, I don't smudge up my work. You want to kind of try to work so that it looks pretty good without having to start to blend it in. You never want to press down so hard on the charcoal that the pencil's like being pulverized, or the pencil's sort of like fracturing off into little dust and stuff like that. It is charcoal, so there might be a little bit of dust that comes off of it, but if you're like grinding this thing into the paper and it's like pure white and everything else like that, you're pressing down a little bit too hard. What I'm going to tell you to do is to work, you know, a little by little, but like section by section. Don't just work like box by box. Work a little bit section by section. In this case, the first section I'm going to work on over here is going to be the ear. Now, the easiest thing to do to screw this up is to start jumping around and hopping around, meaning that you start going from like random spots, like I'll do a little bit here, I'll do a little bit here, I'll do a little bit here. It's an easy way to get lost and confused on this thing, and then after a while you can't make things connect or work. Once you have some charcoal on the actual paper, again, I'm going to tell you to take out one of the blending stumps. I gave you a couple bags of these things that is just the rolled up paper. Try not to use them like a pencil point, like vertical. I use them closer to being on their side. That way I can kind of use this to smoothen out the charcoal as I'm going. The only thing I'm going to tell you about this is that when you're doing a really, really bright spot, I'm going to tell you not to press down super duper hard on that. If you press down really, really hard on a very bright spot, like say right over here, and I blend down with my blending stump and really grind it into the paper, what happens is that it gets something called burnished. And burnished just means it's sort of like flattened out really, really severely. Because of that, it starts to be a little see-through, and that means you can see some of the black coming through. And it almost never quite becomes completely white again. So on the areas that are supposed to be really, really bright, your job is not to press down too hard. For the areas that are pretty dark gray, but not quite black, you want to actually use some of the charcoal that gets picked up on your blending stump to make those values. And you'll see at one point now, I'm pretty much shading with just the charcoal that's on the actual blending stump. Other than that, most of this is just taking your time and doing a little by little. Now, for some areas that have to be really, really white, after I've sort of blended them in and I've done all my little blending and smoothing, then I can come back with my white pencil and just go over that spot a little bit more. That's just going to add that last bit of brightness to really make it pop. But I don't want to go back and blend that stuff in with the blending stump, because if I do, a lot of that little brightness will just go away immediately. So if you have a couple spots that need to just be a little bit brighter, after you've blended them in, you can come back over top of them with a little bit more white charcoal. For areas like on the side of the face, the cat's face over here, that really isn't that bright, again, just use a little bit of the white that's been put on your actual blending stump once you start blending. That's going to help you make those lighter grays, or not lighter grays, those actually darker grays. And for me, it's a lot easier than putting down the white, because you can find that a lot of white comes off right away. For things like little bits of texture and stuff like that that you might have in your picture, I don't think you have to worry about adding those things, but like, for example, for you, Ariana, if you want, in your particular drawing, you can really come back in here and do some of those little dots if you want. I don't think the picture absolutely needs it for it to be successful, but you can do things like that if you wish. I'm going to work on this for a little while so you can see how I do it. It's really kind of, once you get going, pretty self-explanatory. But I don't want you to get up to this part without me first checking your drawing and making sure your drawing is legit. I don't want you to start shading on your drawing if some parts of it are out of proportion or if there are still other things that I think you should be able to draw. Again, my recommendation is try to work left to right. Don't jump around from part to part. Work little section by little section. Don't press the pencil down so hard into the paper that the texture of the paper gets completely covered up at first. And try to make this look pretty decent before you start in with the blending. The blending with the blending stump will almost always make things a little bit darker. And keep that in mind in your brightest areas. You don't want to press down very hard at all. You really just kind of want to work a little bit of it into the paper, and then you can go back over top of it afterwards. When you use the blending stump, use it on its side. In an area like this, which is going to be super duper white, it's one of the big hot spots on this picture, I'm really just not going to press down super hard, but I am going to try to work a little bit of that charcoal into the paper. And by doing an area like this, it's going to put a lot of charcoal on my actual little blending stump, and that's going to be helpful in doing some of the areas that need just a slight bit of white on them. So now I'm going to come back over top of one of those spots that needs to be really bright. Add a little bit more charcoal just to make it really, really bright. And I'm not going to blend it that second time. I'm going to do that in some of the spots right up in here as well. Kind of goes on a little bit smoother once an area's kind of been worked over a little bit. I could see a little tiny bit of detail that I might have missed that's supposed to be black. And then we're working on black paper. You can always take an eraser, come back in, and erase that little bit of detail back into the picture. And if you want to ask the question, well, what about areas that are really black and really dark? Well, the answer is just leave them the black of the paper. You don't have to do anything for those areas. Those areas are already sort of filled in, so really what you're focusing on is just the light and the white. Alright. I guess that's all you get for 20 minutes. Hope that was somewhat helpful, and if anybody wants me to do a little bit of their drawing, I'll be glad to do it. But like I said, don't start on the white charcoal until I've checked your actual pencil drawing. If I give you the thumbs up on the pencil drawing, you can get started. What I suggest again is, if you're a righty, work left to right, top to bottom, just like we did on the portrait. If you're a lefty, obviously flip that up the opposite way. Take your time. Focus on a small area at a little time. I was kind of rushing through this thing, but you can see what I got done in 20 some odd minutes. We're going to get a lot of time to do this. No need to rush. I don't want anything to just be done quickly. I also do want to get it done eventually, so let's keep that in mind as well.